This is another video for you to watch. This one is dealing with creative writing tips, techniques, more stylistic um, guidelines than rigid grammar rules like we saw in the last video. So for those of you who are counting, this is the second orientation video. The first one again was those more stringent grammar and punctuation rules. So what you'll find in this video is there aren't really any set rules, and the guidelines we're presenting are much more flexible. If you don't follow these rules, nothing is going to be grammatically incorrect. You won't get points deducted on an English essay. But these are guidelines which are really going to help make your writing more interesting, easier to read, and it's going to help you become a better writer by making writing easier for you if you bear some of these in mind as we're moving forward. And of course, this is just a very small selection of all of the things we could be discussing, just to kind of get your feet wet in terms of the creative writing world. So the first question, of course, is why? Why should we care about writing styles and stylistic differences and techniques and things like that? Well, the first thing is it makes your writing more interesting, and if it's interesting, what your writing is interesting, it's going to be easier for you to write because you'll be more engaged with it, and it's going to be easier for somebody else to read because they'll be engaged in it as well. Like I said, easier to read. It's going to make your writing flow better, and some of you might know what I mean by flow. If you don't, flow just refers to how your writing sounds. Does it sound stilted? Does it sound as though maybe you're not sure about what you're speaking about? Or, if you're searching for words, or you're not using the right word because you couldn't think of it. Those kind of things. Think of when somebody speaks, somebody's fluent in a language, you can tell because their words come very easily and they form sentences in such a way that you can tell that they know what they're speaking about. And the same is very true for writing as well. If you're a good writer, you can read somebody's work and say, this person knows how to write, this person knows what they're doing here. And of course, we want to avoid repetition because repetitive writing is boring writing, and then we'll be bored writing it and other people will be bored reading it. So stylistic techniques can help you with all of these things. The first thing, first stylistic technique, and probably the biggest one, is the very sentence structure. So if you keep all your sentences the same length, the same order of your subjects and your verbs and your adverbs and your adjectives, and they're all, factual sentences or things like that, you're going to have a very, very, very boring report-like document, which isn't really what we're going for in anything. Even in academia, you might have heard, vary your sentence structure to make it more interesting, more engaging, and those kind of things. So here's an example of a passage in which the sentence structure is not very varied. Everyone is happy sometimes, everyone is sad sometimes. This is because we can never be happy all the time. Everyone has things they are sad about, everyone has things that make them happy. Happy things cannot happen to everyone all the time. So as you can see, this person has some very valid points in here, but it's a very repetitive, forced passage, if you will, with the sentence structure. We can rewrite this passage to alter the sentence structure while keeping the same basic message and say at times we can be sad or happy. So here we start with at times, so rather than starting directly with the subject, we start with a prepositional phrase. Unfortunately, we can't be happy all of the time because there are things in life which make us sad. So here we've elongated the sentence by putting this because right here, and we also started with an adverb instead of the subject. Next we say good things are nice, but they can't happen all the time. So here we started directly with the subject. We had this comma conjunction pattern. Otherwise, we wouldn't appreciate them. So we ended with a shorter sentence. So you can see here, it's a different sentence structure we've utilized throughout the passage, and it makes it easier to read it, less repetitive, less forced. So just some tips when you're looking at how to alter your sentence structure or to vary your sentence structure. You want to use conjunctions wisely, so make sure you have that comma conjunction. But don't link sentences that shouldn't be linked, and don't use the wrong sentence. So the wrong conjunction. So if you need a comma and, don't put comma but or because the different conjunctions mean different things, so just make sure you're using the right one. Also use punctuation wisely, so don't put semicolon, 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 semicolon if those sentences should not be linked. Also, don't put commas in lieu of periods, and so on and so forth. And then vary your subject. So don't use the same subject all the time. Even if you are speaking about, I don't know, Tony the Butcher. Well, you can put Tony, you can put the butcher, you can put Tony the Butcher, you can put the man, you could put, some reference to his hair color. You can refer to Tony the Butcher in a variety of ways. You don't have to keep saying Tony, 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 Tony. Just some notes on impersonal subjects. So impersonal subjects is when you don't have somebody specific you're referring to, like Tony the Butcher. There are many ways we can form sentences using impersonal subjects. So first of all, you have the everyone, everybody, anyone, anybody. Also, oftentimes pronouns like we and they, or even one, are used when you aren't referring to somebody particular. So I can say, we have a good society, or we are privileged to live in this country, or something like that. I'm not referring to any one person in particular. In the last one, maybe I was referring to Canadians in general. By the same token, I'm sure you've heard people say, they said on the TV, or they say on the radio, or they say white and grey does not go together. They does not refer to anybody in particular. Again, you can also say one, so an example of that might be, one could walk for miles and still not reach any form of civilization in the desert. So that's just another way to vary it as well. You have the passive voice, which you might have heard should not be used, but if you use it wisely, it can have its uses. Balls can be thrown, or we could say we can throw balls, or they can throw balls, one can throw a ball, anyone can throw a ball, everyone can throw a ball. All of those are different ways of saying virtually the same thing. Also, you can use intangible subjects. So instead of saying we can never be happy, or no one can be happy all the time, we can say happiness is elusive. Another note with sentence lengths is the idea of fragments. So fragments, yes, they're not grammatically correct, but a lot of times in creative writing we'll use fragments to help vary our sentence structure, and also just because they can be very useful. So this is an example of a poem which has no punctuation, other than I see apostrophe there and a period at the end, and a couple of apostrophes, but there's no capital letters, and the whole thing is a run-on sentence. And you can pause the video if you like just to go through it, but that's an example of something where you have one sentence completely run-on, but it makes sense in the creative writing sphere. So another example of a technique we can use is hyperbole. So hyperbole is an exaggeration. The pie was as big as a dinosaur. His nose was as red as a tomato. Anything like that. I ate 500 pounds of cake at dinner. Anything like that is an exaggeration. And hyperboles can be very useful in cathartic writing because they help us place things in perspective. If we say, it hurt so much I felt as though I was going to die. Well, very few of us, I think, have actually felt a pain, hopefully felt a pain that we thought we were going to die from, but things can hurt so much that sometimes if you just exaggerate it, it helps you find the words. It gives you words to put what you're feeling, what you're going through into words. Another thing is hyperbole can also help you give a physical solution to an emotional pain. And here's an example of that. In this particular poem, we're looking at the persona, or the person who is speaking and telling us the poem, literally describes cutting a hole in their chest and removing the heart. Now, obviously, or hopefully, this wasn't what the persona was actually going through. Well, the persona was writing this out to say the pain I'm feeling is like I've just cut out my heart from my chest and left it on the floor, and then the pain went away. Obviously, all of this would be figurative in real life, but just writing out like this can be very therapeutic. Another point to note is that you should write for the audience. So, in general, when you're writing, you have to bear in mind who you're writing for. Is it for my professor, my TA, for my friends on Facebook, those kind of things? You will use very different language, very different writing styles. You want to consider things like the age of your audience, so children versus adults perhaps, the intelligence, so are they professors, are they TAs, the formality you need, the purpose of your message, and also the general message you're sending. Are you sending, a party invitation? Are you sending a letter of complaint? In creative writing, our audiences can differ. So who are you writing for? Are you writing a book for publication? Who's your audience? What age group are you targeting? Are you writing a journal for yourself? Are you writing something to demonstrate a creative writing technique? Those kind of things. So we do have to bear the audience in mind when we write creatively. Another point is precision. So as with all writing, you don't want to waffle or use words which aren't needed. For example, he asked if she would cease and desist her incessant displays of attention directed towards his person. So there's two things wrong here. One is that you're using longer words and bigger words when shorter, simpler words would suffice. Now remember that shorter, simpler words make writing easier. So when we write creatively, we don't necessarily want to go for the biggest, longest word because no one's counting word space or pages or things like that. There's nobody we need to impress, and sometimes the simplest words can actually do the best job. So this has a lot of extra words and a lot of larger words, and this whole thing can be condensed into "he said, leave me alone," very, very simply. Alright, so I think I mentioned this once or twice, but when we write creatively, we have a whole stack of grammar rules, punctuation rules, writing rules that we've been drilled since probably the first day of kindergarten. And the one rule of thumb for creative writers is if you know why you're breaking the rule, then go ahead and do it. If you don't know why you're breaking the rule, or you don't know the rule, that's bad. You shouldn't be breaking rules then. But if you know why you're breaking a rule, then go ahead and do it. For example, do not go outside. This is a very simple example, but notice in capital letters. In proper English, we don't capitalize words in the middle of sentences. But since we know here, we're using the not for emphasis, we can break that rule. Another one, I don't care, or there should be a period after care. But if you have this separation through periods of sentence fragments, you're trying to portray something here. You're trying to portray an emphasis, maybe a very heavy pressure given to your words. And if you know that you're doing that and you know why you're doing it, then it's perfectly alright to do. Finally, this passage here has a lot of grammatical errors, but the reason we're doing it is to try and give the persona, the person speaking, the character speaking, a voice. We're trying to characterize them. And you can see here, based on this, now, our character is probably not very educated, is probably very angry with, or emotionally tied to these events due to the way she's rambling, it seems to be. So that's it for now. I'm going to try and write up some exercises to send to you, just to help you with some of the stylistic techniques. And please remember to keep writing and keep practicing. So why do I keep telling you to keep writing and keep practicing? Because the majority of you, if not all of you, are going to be facilitating workshops. And the problem with that is, or not the problem, but something to bear in mind is, if you're going to be facilitating something or teaching something, you have to be very, very comfortable with it. So that's why I keep pushing all this writing on all of you. So I hope you don't mind. And who knows, maybe you'll find that you enjoy it after a while. So that's it for now then.